footballs.co.za.
Mihir Bose is in Brazil. Mihir Bose, top football author, works for the Evening Standard, knows the game backwards, and of course it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I can't believe that I've done this to you. Mihir Bose, how are you feeling this morning?
Well, I wasn't expecting you so early, but there we are. I'm feeling fine. I'm trying to get the sleep out of my eyes.
I'm so sorry, Mihir.
Don't worry about it.
I thought 8 o'clock in the morning English time was early enough, but of course in Brazil you're 5 hours before us. Mihir, you've done, I don't know, how many World Cups have you actually done?
This is my 6th World Cup.
Exactly. You've done 6 World Cups. You've seen it all. You've discussed it all. You've written books about it. I'd like you to tell us about your books a little bit later. How does this World Cup compare for you to the other ones you've been to? What was your first? Was it
my first was in America in 1994.
94, yeah.
And compared to that, I mean, I think the football I've seen is probably the best that I've seen. It's been compelling. It's been very engrossing to watch. There's been some very great play. You were talking just a minute ago before I came on about Rodriguez. You know, what a wonderful goal he scored against Uruguay. But I think this is a very odd World Cup in the sense, I've covered Olympics as well and so on, that when you arrive at a major international event, whichever city you arrive in, the first thing is there's all sorts of if you like, flags, buntings, things like that make you feel you've come to a special event.
Yeah.
That's the one thing missing here. And when I arrived in Sao Paulo, which was 3 weeks ago, just for the FIFA Congress leading to the first match, there was no feeling that a World Cup was on. There were no flags, hardly any atmosphere. There was, of course, when the game started at the stadium, but before that, nothing to make you feel that this was a city about to go through a great experience. And that has been more or less the same going around Brazil. I've been around several cities. I haven't been to every city, but I have been to Fortaleza, Recife, Natal. And that it is as if the World Cup is on, but the Brazilian people, and of course, as you're well aware, we're all well aware, there were a lot of protests last year during the Confederation Cup. It's as if the Brazilian people have decided to hold their noses up in the air. They don't like the stench coming from their government and from FIFA, and enjoy the football, but only at the stadium.
So how does that compare to South Africa 4 years ago, Mihir? Because I felt the opposite to that. I felt that the people were more engaged than perhaps our footballers.
Absolutely. South Africa, I must say, did not produce a single moment of football that you can look back and say, oh, that was wonderful. But the people were absolutely wonderful. The Vuvuzela, where you went around, there was an, how can you put it? There was a sort of link, and you felt an empathy with what was happening. South Africa was very proud. The World Cup had come to Africa, when everybody had said, oh, well, Africa can't do it. How can you take it to South Africa and so on? There were, of course, things like, the nights in Johannesburg, your city going suddenly very cold, having been a wonderful day. We were not used to that sort of thing.
We do have winter, yeah. It only comes at night.
I must say, it came as a complete surprise. I mean, the days were wonderful, and then suddenly you go to a match thinking it's midsummer, and you find you're in midwinter.
Particularly in Bloemfontein, I think if you stayed overnight in Bloemfontein, it goes down to -4 sometimes. During the day, it can be 70, 75. It's bizarre, but that's South Africa for you. But so what you're saying, this is very interesting, Mihir. You're saying that in South Africa, a wonderful link with the people and empathy or pride, and you're not seeing that at all in Brazil.
No, in Brazil, in fact, if you talk to ordinary people, and in South Africa, everybody said, oh, yes, it's great, we can do it. Of course, South Africa, the feeling was, the world has challenged us. Can we do this? The Rainbow Nation, can it prove that it can hold one of the great world events? Here, the feeling is, this is Brazil. Remember, this is a country made for football and made by football. There's no other country. Even England, the country that created football, is not, in that sense, as much a football nation as this. No. And yet, you talk to everybody, and they say, no, the World Cup, we've spent far too much money. We need, 10 billion has been spent. We were told no money was going to be spent. We need money for healthcare, social services, and so on. And I have actually, in the last few days, I have met somebody
Yeah.
who has said that we hope Brazil don't win, and this is Brazilian I'm talking about, because if Brazil wins, the president will get re-elected. And there were other people who've told me, a lot of other people, that Brazil is on an emotional knife edge. It was against Chile, and against Chile, Brazil came very close to getting beaten. We were very lucky. I've never seen a Brazilian team play in this fashion. It's unrecognizable.
True.
And I was told going into the match, I was watching it because I was not in Horizonte. I was here in Rio waiting for the match, Colombia Uruguay.
Yes.
I was told that if we have already got, this was journalists telling me, we have already got a whole load of articles prepared. Saying what are going to be the economic, political consequences should Brazil get eliminated, and what is more, well, what they've got here, Neil, in Copacabana, as you would expect, a big FIFA fan fest,
yes.
And something like 1 million people were there. And as Brazil were struggling against Chile, many of them rushed there saying, well, if this goes belly up, we don't know what the reaction will be. So it's as if, there's a small section perhaps who feel that they'd like Brazil eliminated because they hate the president so much. This other section feel that if they get eliminated, there could be protests, because so far we haven't had protests. The only thing I've seen unrelated to football was in Fortaleza, Brazil, Mexico, where there were a group of people saying we should all turn to Jesus. But apart from that, I haven't seen anything that is not related to football. Sorry, I've got nothing against people turning to Jesus. I personally am not a believer, but that's a different story.
It is a different story.
The point is that this is the whole thing. You come to Brazil thinking you're coming to the land of Pelé. You will be engulfed in football. And the other thing, Neil, and this is amazing, Pelé hasn't been seen anywhere.
Yes.
He has not come to a single match. He has just not been seen. And remember, to me, I grew up, you mentioned Brazil, I mentioned Pelé.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know. I think we all do, don't we?
So Nelson Mandela was wheeled out off his sick bed to show his face at the final, and we haven't seen anything of Pelé, football's kind of greatest figure, in any match. I hadn't thought of that.
Not at all. The only time we saw Pelé, and those were some fortunate journalists, when just before the tournament began, a few days before, at Sao Paulo, he came to one of these, press dues, good food, canopies and so on.
No, I don't know what those are like.
I know, absolutely. They pass you by, they don't invite you.
Absolutely.
But, and he turned up, said a few words, and that's it. And since then, of course, his image is everywhere, because he markets himself, or his advisors make sure he markets himself very well, but he hasn't been seen. And this would be like a World Cup in England without Bobby Charlton ever being seen, or one in Germany without Beckenbauer ever being seen.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely right.
It is very, and what's interesting, and this is very interesting, you might find this interesting, is Maradona has been seen at the Argentinian matches, and the Argentinian fans have been taunting the Brazilians, saying, our Maradona is better than your Pelé. This has been one of their songs. This has been one of their songs.
I didn't know any of that. This is the great advantage of it. We spoke to a few people that have been there. I spoke to Raymond Hack, a South African who was on the FIFA disciplinary panel, and he was talking to us about Suarez. He told us that in the Suarez case, he's just back here at the moment. He's going back for the semi-finals. In the Suarez case, he said they didn't pay any attention at all to the previous Suarez biting incidents. He said, we completely divorced ourselves from that. We based our 4-month ban purely on the 25-plus cameras that FIFA provided and on the incident itself, with no reverting to the actual incidents, the two earlier incidents at Ajax and Chelsea. I find that staggering. A 4-month ban based on one incident like that, would you say that's harsh?
I find that okay, it's possible that they didn't discuss it, but I find it difficult that as they sat around that table, whichever table it was in Rio,
yes.
They wouldn't have had it in their minds, what Suarez has done, and those two in Ajax and Chelsea are the ones we know about. We don't know what else might have happened and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that wouldn't have played some part. Yes, they wouldn't have formally discussed it. But I'm not sure that wouldn't have played. What Suarez incident shows, of course, and there is, I must say, a lot of anger in FIFA about this,
yes.
is how the Uruguayan Federation has handled it. The statements made, let me tell you, the statements made by the Uruguayan president, one FIFA official, I can't name him, obviously. He said, if this was an official of a European federation, by now he would have lost his job. Because, I mean, obviously, let's face facts. Suarez's explanation of what he did, initial explanation,
yes,
showed that he's not only a man who can use his teeth in a football field, but he probably has missed his vocation. He should be writing fiction of some kind.
A spin doctor, yes.
The way he put it, I mean, it's since come out. And I can't believe that could have been written without advice from the Uruguayan Federation, without advice from lawyers. They must have had, I know they employed a Brazilian lawyer, but they must have had a lot of. So, it raises, Neil, a very serious question. Yeah. You have in your organization a very high-profile employee, but he's, at the end of the day, an employee, let's face it, in those terms, doing something which which is terrible. Yeah. Instead of sort of saying, right, he has done it, we take responsibility. And we saw that earlier with Liverpool to a certain extent. We're seeing it here again with Uruguay. They back off and they draw the wagons in and say, no, this never happened, things like that. And it does raise questions about, in sport, everybody talks about you've got to be responsible. You've got to take, responsibility for what you do. Then Absolutely. What happens when you do something wrong? Shouldn't the federation, shouldn't the people at the top say to him, hang on a second, what happened was terrible, and we have to take it on the chin.
Yeah, and they didn't. I mean, they did it. What the Uruguayan president said was they're picking on Luis Suarez because he hasn't got a university degree. The FIFA gang, and he called them some pretty rude things that I can't repeat on family radio. I found it staggering that the Uruguayan president came out and then Suarez apologises. Bang.
Well, obviously, he must have apologized. And I know this is what makes you cynical, the fan cynical. He must have apologized because, I mean, it looks very clear that Real Madrid are well into talks, aren't they, with Liverpool?
It looks like Barcelona, actually.
Oh, sorry, Barcelona. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Barcelona. Well,
the quote from Ian Ayres at Liverpool this morning is, very productive talks. Both sides have similar ideas. That suggests to me that he'll be at Barcelona before he ever plays for Liverpool again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that suggests the deal is all done, all but done.
Yeah.
I mean, there are, I'm sure, clauses saying, how much more money will they get when he scores his 10th goal. I don't know if there will be clauses how much more money they get if he uses his teeth again. I don't know. You have these clauses. I don't know whether that clause will be put in. Use of teeth. Another $1 million to Liverpool.
It does look that way, doesn't it?
That's an interesting thought, isn't it?
It sure is, Mihir. Listen, I've kind of run out of time. I woke you up at 6 o'clock in the morning for this.
Don't worry.
I would very much like to kind of get you on board on a regular basis and make this something a little bit more, because no one knows the game better than you do. 6 World Cups.
That's very nice coming from an Arsenal fan.
Let's not start the Arsenal Spurs thing, Mihir. Listen, but what fascinates me and what will stick with South Africans after this interview is you saying that in South Africa, massive passion from the people, massive support for the World Cup. In Brazil, much less of that feeling. I'm very interested by that.
Yeah, South Africa had pride that the World Cup had come to them. Brazil seems to be indifferent that, the World Cup has come, which is very surprising.
Thank you, Mihir. That's actually very nice to hear 4 years on when we've got all these stadiums dotted around the country not being used. And Mihir Bose, we'll be back to enjoy the World Cup. Who's going to win it?
I must say I fancy Argentina. Lionel Messi, that's the thing. You watch an Argentina game and you wait and you wait and you wait, and finally Lionel Messi decides, well, I'll produce a bit of magic. He does. And, in a situation like that, I think they might just do it.
Brilliant. Mihir, thanks a million for talking to us today. Enjoy yourself, and I hope Spurs have a mediocre season.
Thank you.
Cheers, Mihir. Thanks so much, mate.
Bye.
Mihir Bose, guys, what I didn't do, I will tweet this. He's got a couple of books out. He's an author, and he's one of your real intellectual football reporters. He's not like me. He's not sensationalist and tabloid like me. Mihir gets to the bottom of the problem. Fascinating stuff, that Comfort, don't you think? That South Africa, you come here and you get this great feeling of pride and all that, and he's saying no, but not where he goes. When he goes in Brazil, he doesn't even see a sign that the World Cup's on except to the stadiums, which is where we come back to with these protests.
Balls.co.za